Hey everyone, Tankenstein here, and welcome to another one of my weak spot guides. In this video, I'll go over how to defeat, in my opinion, one of the absolute toughest to kill tanks in the game at any BR, the T-44. I'll go over 5, or depending on how you see it, 6 weak spots in this video in order for you to finally rid it from the battlefield. I will tell you which shells are best for which shots, and I'll give you tactics for how to defeat this tank at the end of this video. The first 4 or 5 weak spots will be for those with between 120 and around 180 millimeters of armor pen, with the final shot requiring about 215 millimeters of armor pen, all taking into consideration range from the T-44 as well as angle of attack. Like I said, this thing is tough, but that said, let's get into it. And just so you know, I'll be using the regular T-44 for this weak spot guide because it is more common to face in battle and has essentially the same armor, minus the 6mm side skirt. By the time you reach the BR bracket by which the T-44-100 sits, the side skirts are useless, as most tanks have access to heat ammunition that have plenty of pen to shoot through it, if of course they're not using some other type of ammunition. And aside from the gun, the only other real difference on the T-44-100 is a slightly smaller commander's cupola. The base level T-44 is simply a tougher opponent at 6.3 than the T-44-100 is at 7.0. Even if BRs are changed for these vehicles by the time you watch this vehicle, my logic will still make sense, I'm sure, unless Gaijin really messes with the BRs. And though I will be starting off with some of the relatively easier shots in this video, I'll show you in just a moment how to destroy this beast from the front. That said, for weak spot number 1, as with most if not all Soviet tanks, while the frontal armor is potent, the side armor is easy, especially being that it is unangled and is only 75 millimeters thick, which is easy for most tanks past 4 or even more so, especially 5.0 BR, even at long range. Though most tanks have relatively poor side armor in general, what makes Soviet tanks worse than most tanks in this regard is how ridiculously poor their ammo management is, as well as their crew layout. So you can see here, they've got no crew and terrible. There's substantially almost more space given to ammo than their crew. So this being said, if you hit the forward portion on the right side of the T-44, so the right side being the right of it, not if you were to look at it on the right, but rather from the T-44's perspective, there's a huge ammo rack the size of a barn. It's massive, dense, and it's just, again, full of ammo, and if you hit this, it will easily annihilate the T-44. Even just behind that giant ammo rack lies a smaller ammo rack of ammunition, well, obviously an ammo rack of ammunition, which would provide explosive results if hit. Now, just as importantly, the crew is so tight in the turret, and there are only 4 crew members in the entire tank, which means that even if you don't get a side hole shot ammo rack kill, you will very likely earn a crew kill. Between the poor ammo placement and crew size, Soviet tanks are very easy to destroy from the side. The best ammunition for this shot is APHE ammunition. Now, I would avoid heat type ammunition as well as APCR and even AP ammo if possible. APHE will almost definitely either ammo rack the enemy T-44 or kill the crew, whereas heat has lackluster post-pen damage and really, in my experience, could just shoot right through this entire tank, which could really just mean that the tank will either be at full operational status even after a pen, or you might have only killed 1 crew member or damaged a module. APCR is much the same in this regard. Too much pen and not enough post-pen damage. AP is decent, as are Sabo rounds, but APHE is still the king in this scenario, bar none. As I just kind of showed numerous times, every single shot is just a crew and probably an ammo rack kill. Always go for the APHE. And for your second kill shot, you'll want to hit the side of the turret, but mostly in the rear if possible. This is due to the large ammo rack sitting at the back of the turret. If you hit that, the tank will be gone. If you don't hit it but still manage to pen the center or the side of the turret, you'll destroy the crew and likely many essential modules, like the cannon breech and various turret drives. I'd say this might very well be one of your most common kill shots against the T-44, because if you are facing it from the front and it needs to turn its turret, it'll open up a very good and likely kill shot if you shoot the side of it. The side of the turret is angled in such a way that you should be able to pen it with ease as long as the enemy T-44 is looking even just slightly away from you. So for example, the BR-365K is not really a good shell to show this, but this one's a little bit better being that it has more armor pen. You should be able to more or less, even at this steep of an angle, if it is looking away from you, pen the side. Oh, not even. Guess you're not allowed to pen the side. So you should be able to pen the side here, go right in, kill the crew, possibly ammo rack it, and even better yet, if you can hit it kind of like where this bulge is, that's where the armor should be at the most favorable angle for you, give or take. It's kind of weird. It depends on how you angle it, but you should be able to go right in there, kill the crew, possibly ammo rack the tank as a whole. Now, while I'll go over tactics for how to beat the T-44 towards the end of this video, if you can get an ally to distract the T-44 just enough to turn its turret slightly, you should be able to slip into the side of the turret with APHE and destroy the crew with ease. APHE is the preferred shell here, but AP and Sabo are decent as well, largely due to their low likelihood to ricochet while still providing a large amount of pen. Heat and APCR should be avoided when fighting the side of the turret. They have too much armor pen and not enough post pen damage to be effective here. As a general rule, unless you have no other choice, avoid shooting the T-44 with APCR ammunition. If there was a top 10 list of tanks not to shoot with APCR anywhere, the T-44 easily would make that list, and it possibly could be top 5 or even number 1 on that list. And now for weak spot number 3. Though the obvious answer for your third weak spot would be to hit the turret face on the T-44, especially at the left side of the cannon. Again, if you were the T-44, I'm talking about from the T-44's perspective, that left side, so right here. Being that it looks like the same relatively easy to pen turret on the T-34-85, you'd be wrong. The turret face on the T-44 is up armored by 30 millimeters compared to that old turret, for a total of 120 millimeters of armor at the front. Add to this the volumetric shell wizardry that occurs with the T-44, and you'll end up with some fairly large portions of the face of this turret that have well in excess of 200 millimeters of armor that I'll show in just a second when facing regular AP and APHE ammunition. This effectively turns the turret face into a shell sponge, at least if you can't seem to hit the turret in the exact right spot, and trust me, it's not going to be that easy to hit it in the exact right spot. It is possible, of course, to land a devastating hit on the T-44 on the front of the turret, but again, it won't be easy, as you need to hit immediately next to the cannon, preferably again on the left side, as that's where both the gunner and commander sit. So what I mean by that is, right here, it's not that bad, about 122 millimeters. But you start going around it and you're talking way more armor, especially at the top here. You have some spots 600 plus millimeters of armor. It's just insane how crazy this is on the left side of the right side of the turret. It's over 400 millimeters of armor. And this is when talking about regular AP or APHE ammunition. It's just not going to be an easy shot, and really the only place on the front of the turret that you might be able to get a hit is right around right here. And this is kind of why I mentioned that there might be 5 or even 6 weak spots, because I'm kind of doing a combo weak spot here in just a second. Now again, this is not an easy shot because it's almost like a trap in that it looks easy but is genuinely difficult, because all it takes is a slightly errant shell or a slight movement of your aim to take a perfect T-44 killing hit and land it on the aforementioned shot sponge on the turret, which is really anywhere up top, to the right, to the left, so on and so forth. This said, kind of the part 2 to this weak spot shot is that if you're not looking to try your luck with this deceivingly difficult shot, you can instead hit the commander's cupola. This is a great shot, but is best used only when there are no other options and when you have APHE ammunition. If you have APHE, you can take out the entire crew in the turret and potentially ammo rack the enemy T-44. If you only have AP, APCR, heat, or other similar non-explosive rounds, you might only kill the commander, which, while still useful, isn't as necessary as taking out the gunner, loader, or driver. Additionally, if you're looking to pierce the turret face, of course, Heat FS and Sable rounds will work. It's only just that they're not insanely common at this BR. So what I'm saying is, again, the commander's cupola, it's not that difficult to pen. There's a pretty decent line right here where it's only about 120 millimeters, give or take, up to around 150 or so millimeters of armor pen. Shoot right in there, and you can take out the entire crew in the turret, which would effectively just shut this thing down. Of course, it still will be able to move if the driver does stay alive, but you do have the option of taking out the commander's cupola, and it's fairly large, thankfully, on the T-44, so it should provide a decent shot, for you to do right there. And again, if you do shoot it with APCR, you might only be able to kill the commander, so try to avoid that. And I guess APCR is kind of usable right here. If you do have the option, you won't be able to kill the entire crew, but if for whatever reason you do have APCR, it does kind of increase the area that these shots are possible, but it doesn't really do it by all too much, especially if you have an inaccurate gun. And for weak spot number 4, this one I'll just mention briefly because it is a trap shot and as such isn't something that you can rely on too often, especially at range. If you hit the bottom of the turret face, preferably on the right side of the tank, there's a chance it'll ricochet into the roof of the hull, sending the shot right into the huge ammo rack sitting on that side of the tank. This is a possible shot, and if you have no other recourse, you can try it, but it will likely not happen all too often. Thus, you should either attempt other shots or avoid fighting the T-44 from the front altogether if you are incapable of making the other shots or flanking it for a side shot. As per usual, the APHE ammunition is best for this shot. So it is a fairly large shot trap, as you can see right there. Perfect. I mean, it's pretty large, especially compared to other tanks, and typically the areas that you'll be able to do this on are on either side of the turret, right outside of where the portion is where the cannon moves. Forgive me, I am actually forgetting the term for this, the mantlet perhaps, but if you shoot to the side of that, especially on the right side of the tank, it should go right into the ammo rack and again kill the entire crew and ammo rack at the same time. This all being said, if you have less than 120 millimeters of armor pen, but more so specifically less than 150 millimeters of armor pen and some sort of APHE, APDS, or APFDS ammunition, you should probably avoid the front of the T-44 at all costs. Even still, if you're attacking the T-44 dead on and without an angle, the penable areas that are less than 150 millimeters of armor are few and far between and are very, very small. On top of this, they tend to not be juicy targets unless you have the aforementioned APHE, APDS, or APFSDS ammunition. Now this all said, let's get to the 5th and final, or 6th and final weak spot. Realistically speaking, the T-44 is nearly invulnerable from the front in its current state versus anything outside of precision shots to the turret. In order to pen any portion of the front of the hull, I would recommend having at least 215 millimeters of armor penetration with regular AP or APHE ammunition in your current situation. Even then, I would only shoot near the bottom of the upper glacis on the front, as this will likely give you the least resistance, especially if your cannon sits higher than this portion of the T-44, being that it will be at a more favorable angle. Besides this shot with the high pen APHE and or without APDS, HEFS, APF, SDS, and maybe some rare HESH ammunition, I would avoid the front of the T-44 at all costs. This goes doubly so for APCR. Do not use APCR versus the front of this hull. It will not work. And I'll just kind of show you real quick here. Germany, one of the most popular tanks obviously with Germany is the Tiger II, Tiger II-H specifically. And I mean, if you're looking at it straight on, it gives it some fits. It will give it a difficult time, but as you look down here, it is a little bit less resistance. And obviously, because the Tiger II does sit a little bit higher, it should be a little bit easier because, again, it'll be at a more favorable angle. But one thing I would avoid is the lower glacis. It's not going to be an easy shot. It's a small shot, and unless this is on a mountain or something that's kind of raising it above you, the lower glacis is not going to be a good shot for you. One other thing to watch out for is if you are looking at this at an angle, it becomes really, really difficult to shoot. I would just, again, try to shoot somewhere around this area, being that it tends to have the lowest resistance. Again, if you have over 215 millimeters of armor pen in your current situation, which means range, so distance, obviously the farther you get, the worse armor pen you have, and also combat angle. So just take all that into consideration, and this tends to be about your only shot that you're going to make consistently if you have in excess of 15 millimeters of armor penetration. And now that I've gone over the best weak spots for killing the T-44, let's get into tactics for how to defeat it in a match. Again, being that the entire front of the T-44 is very difficult to pen and somewhat invulnerable in some cases, and being that it has a more powerful iteration of the 85mm cannon that T-34 brother has, I would recommend flanking the T-44 every time you face it, unless you have an absurd amount of armor pen or advanced ammunition. You may need to work in teams to beat this thing, with one person distracting and the other person going for the flank kill or the previously mentioned side turret shot if and when the T-44 turns its head. Aside from this, you may get lucky with the previously mentioned trap shot, as it is larger on the T-44 than most other tanks and will likely cause an ammo rack kill if hit. Beyond this, the tracks are still very vulnerable, and if nothing else, you can earn a mobility kill against the T-44 with relative ease. Of course, the gun will still be active, but if you can kind of anchor it in place, that could go a long way towards other tactics. Now, I would recommend either destroying the tracks of this tank and going for a flank if you're alone, or destroying the cannon and then shooting the T-44's commander cupola with APHE ammunition. From here, you will likely have taken out the turret crew, as well as forced the T-44 to repair its cannon, so it will likely be out of commission for upwards of 45 seconds, possibly over a minute depending on other crew and module damage. During this time, unless you're pinned down by other tanks, I would recommend going in for the kill shot against the T-44. Unless you have a large amount of explosive filler in your shell, I'd go for the side flank shot to finish off this tank, as a turret shot might not be able to kill the driver. Realistically speaking, this strategy will be your best chance to consistently kill T-44s. Destroy the cannon, then go for the commander's cupola, hopefully again with APHE, and then go for the flank or turret kill. If you do not have APHE, still destroy the cannon, but instead destroy one or both of its tank tracks so that it will not be able to move, and then you'll be able to go in for a flank kill. Unfortunately, killing the T-44 for most people is not going to be an easy affair, especially if you sit at or below 6.3 BR, but it is possible if you know where to shoot. Thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe if you have not done so already, as it substantially helps my channel to grow. And I just want to say thanks all so much for the great responses to my most recent video about how I want to look at War Thunder in a positive light as opposed to all the negative people out there. This game is still something that I very much enjoy, and I appreciate all the hard work that Gaijin's put into it. Again, I do recognize the faults in War Thunder, but really, there's no other game like this in the world. That being said, hope you guys are all excellent to each other, and I'll see you all on the other side. Thanks again, everyone, and take care.